The rain hammered against the cracked windshield of Sophie Mitchell's 15-year-old sedan, each drop like a fist pounding on her last shred of hope. She sat in the hospital parking lot in Portland, Oregon, staring at the discharge papers in her trembling hands. Stage 3. Aggressive treatment required. Cost, $340,000. Her father had 3 months without treatment, maybe 6 with it. Sophie looked at the numbers on her phone's calculator app. After selling everything, her mother's wedding ring, the TV, her laptop, even her winter coat, she had $8,947. Not even close, not even a fraction. Her phone buzzed. Another creditor. 5th call today. She let it go to voicemail, her stomach twisting into knots so tight she thought she might be sick right there in the car. Robert Mitchell had been a dock worker for 37 years, never missed a day, never asked for anything. And now he was dying because his daughter couldn't save him. Sophie pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, the smell of mildew from the car's damp interior making her want to gag. 29 years old, a failed business, $60,000 in debt from her ex-husband's gambling habit, and now this. Her father's cancer felt like the universe's final punch to the gut. She had one option left, one she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks because even thinking about it made her skin crawl. Marcus Reeves. The name alone made her mouth go dry. He ran the Portland docks now, controlled half the shipping that came through the city, and everyone knew his money didn't come from legal cargo. Her father had mentioned him once, just once 2 years ago when Marcus had bought out the shipping company Robert worked for. "Stay away from that man," Robert had said, his voice hard. "He's not someone you make deals with. You don't walk away from men like that." But Sophie didn't have a choice anymore. She started the car, the engine coughing twice before catching, and drove toward the waterfront. The rain turned the city gray, blurring the edges of buildings until everything looked like it was melting. She passed the old neighborhood where she'd grown up, the corner store where her dad used to buy her chocolate bars after school, the park where he'd taught her to ride a bike. The docks appeared through the rain, massive cranes looming like metal giants against the sky. Sophie parked outside a warehouse with Reeves Shipping painted in fatting letters above the bay doors. 2 men in black jackets stood by the entrance, hands in pockets, eyes sharp. She stepped out into the rain, her thin jacket soaking through in seconds. Cold bit into her bones. One of the men moved to block her path. "I need to see Marcus Reeves," Sophie said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man looked her up and down. "Mr. Reeves doesn't take walk-ins." "Tell him Robert Mitchell's daughter needs to talk to him. About a business arrangement." Something shifted in the man's expression. He pulled out a phone, spoke low, then nodded toward the door. "He'll see you. 5 minutes." Inside, the warehouse was dim, the air thick with the smell of salt water and diesel fuel. Forklifts sat idle in rows. Shipping containers were stacked 3 high along the back wall. The man led her through a maze of corridors to a glass-walled office overlooking the warehouse floor. And there he was. Marcus Reeves stood with his back to the door, looking out at his empire. Tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders under a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Dark hair, slightly too long, touched his collar. When he turned, Sophie's breath caught. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, with a face that could have belonged to a model if not for the cold calculation in his dark brown eyes. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, pulling it into a permanent arch. He studied her the way you'd study a chess piece, deciding if she was worth keeping or sacrificing. "Sophie Mitchell." His voice was smooth, almost gentle, which somehow made it more dangerous. "Robert's daughter, I heard about his diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. Brutal." "How do you?" "I know everything that happens on my docks. Your father's a good man, one of the few honest ones left." Marcus gestured to a chair. "Sit, you're soaked." Sophie sat, water dripping from her hair onto the polished concrete floor. Marcus moved to a small bar in the corner, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed her one. She took it, her hands shaking so badly the liquid sloshed. "Why are you here?" Marcus asked, sitting on the edge of his desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker. "I need money for my father's treatment, $340,000. Marcus's expression didn't change. "And what do you have as collateral?" "Nothing, I have nothing. My business failed, my ex-husband left me with his debts. I've sold everything worth selling." Sophie met his eyes, forcing herself not to look away. "I can work for you, whatever you need. I'll do anything." "Anything," Marcus repeated the word slowly, tasting it. "Dangerous word, Sophie, especially in this business." "I don't care. My father is dying. I'll do whatever it takes." Marcus took a sip of whiskey, his eyes never leaving her face. The silence stretched until Sophie wanted to scream. Finally, he spoke. "I have a problem. A shipment coming in next week. High-value merchandise that needs to clear customs without attracting attention. I need someone with no criminal record, no connections to my organization, someone who can walk through those customs gates without raising a single red flag." He leaned forward. "Someone desperate enough to take the risk and smart enough not to ask questions about what's in the containers." Sophie's throat went dry. "That's smuggling." "That's business. You do this one job, I pay for your father's treatment, all of it. Best oncologist in the Northwest. Private room, whatever he needs." "And if I get caught?" "You won't, not if you follow my instructions exactly." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "But if you do, you'll go to prison. Federal charges, 10 to 15 years minimum, and your father will die without treatment." The words hit like a physical blow. Sophie looked down at the whiskey in her hands, watching the amber liquid catch the light. 10 to 15 years. Her father would be gone. She'd lose everything. But he was dying right now. 3 months without treatment. "If I do this," Sophie said slowly, "you pay up front. The hospital gets the money before I touch that shipment." Marcus tilted his head, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "Smart, I agree, but there's one more condition." "What?" "You work for me for 1 year after the job is done. Nothing illegal. Legitimate business operations. Bookkeeping, logistics, whatever I need. You give me that year, and at the end, you walk away clean. No debts, no obligations." Sophie's mind raced. 1 year working for a criminal. 1 year of looking over her shoulder, wondering if the FBI was watching, if someone would put a bullet in her head. But her father would live. He'd get his treatment. He'd have a chance. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Marcus stood, extended his hand. "We have a deal." Sophie shook it. His grip was firm, warm, and she felt the moment her life crossed a line she could never uncross. She just made a deal with the devil, and there was no going back. "Go home," Marcus said. "My people will contact you with details. And Sophie, don't tell anyone about this. Not your father, not your friends, no one, understand?" She nodded and stood, her legs unsteady. As she walked toward the door, Marcus spoke again. "Your father's lucky to have a daughter willing to go this far for him. Not many people have that kind of loyalty anymore." Sophie looked back. Marcus was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something almost like sadness buried under the cold exterior. "I'm not doing this for loyalty," Sophie said quietly. "I'm doing it because I have no other choice." "There's always a choice. You just made yours." Sophie walked out into the rain, and it felt like drowning. 3 days later, Sophie sat in her father's hospital room, watching him sleep. The chemotherapy had started that morning. Marcus had kept his word. The hospital administrator had called her in, looking stunned, and explained that an anonymous donor had paid for the entire treatment plan up front. Robert would get the best care available. Her father's face was gray, his skin papery thin, but he was smiling in his sleep. That was enough. Sophie's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Tomorrow night, 11 p.m., Pier 17. Come alone, wear dark clothes, no phone after you arrive. Her hands started shaking again. Tomorrow, less than 24 hours. Sophie. She looked up. Her father was awake, his hazel eyes, so much like hers, focused on her face. Hey, Dad, how are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, but I'm alive. Robert reached for her hand, his grip weak but warm. The doctor said some donor paid for everything. Did you do something? Sophie forced a smile. A friend helped out, don't worry about it. Sophie, I don't want you doing anything dangerous for me. I'm old. I've had a good life. You're 62, that's not old, and I didn't do anything dangerous. The lie tasted bitter. Just rest, okay? Focus on getting better. Robert studied her for a long moment, and Sophie saw the doubt in his eyes. Her father wasn't stupid, but he was too weak to argue, and eventually he nodded and closed his eyes again. Sophie sat there until visiting hours ended, memorizing the sound of his breathing, storing up this moment in case everything went wrong tomorrow. The next night, Sophie stood on Pier 17 at 10:55 p.m., the taste of fear like metal in her mouth. The pier was dark, abandoned, the water black and choppy below. Wind cut through her dark jacket, making her shiver. A black SUV pulled up, headlights off. The passenger door opened. Sophie climbed in. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, dressed in black from head to toe. In the darkness of the car, he looked like a shadow with eyes. You came, he said. I gave you my word. Words are cheap. Actions matter. Marcus pulled out a folder, handed it to her. Inside are your instructions, your customs identification, and your cover story. You're a logistics consultant for Reeves Shipping, conducting a routine inspection of incoming cargo. The customs agent on duty tonight is on my payroll. He'll clear you through, but you still need to look legitimate. 3 containers. You inspect them, sign the paperwork, and walk out. The whole thing takes 20 minutes. Sophie opened the folder, scanning the documents. Everything looked official, too official. What's in the containers? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. If I'm risking prison, I deserve to know. Marcus's jaw tightened. For a moment, Sophie thought he might kick her out of the car. Then he sighed. Electronics. High-end components that are heavily taxed at the border. I'm bypassing those taxes. That's it. No drugs, no weapons, nothing that will get you a life sentence. But it's still federal smuggling, and you'll still go to prison if something goes wrong. Sophie nodded slowly. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. One more thing, Marcus said, his voice softer. If something does go wrong, you run. You don't try to talk your way out. You don't try to be brave. You run and you call this number. He handed her a burner phone. One call. My people will get you out. Why would you help me if I get caught? Because deals work both ways. I'm not a monster, Sophie. I'm a businessman, and you're valuable to me now. Valuable. The word sat wrong, like something sour. Marcus drove her to the customs gate, parked a block away. Sophie got out, folder in hand, and walked toward the bright lights of the checkpoint. Her heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. The customs agent was young, bored-looking, scrolling through his phone. He barely glanced at her ID before waving her through. Bay 7, 3 containers, make it quick. Sophie walked into the massive warehouse where incoming cargo waited for inspection. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete. The containers sat in a row, marked with Marcus's company logo. She pulled out the inspection checklist, her hands shaking, and began going through the motions. Open the container, check the seal numbers, sign the paperwork, close it again. The first 2 went smoothly. The third container's door stuck, rusty hinges groaning. Sophie yanked harder and it swung open. And that's when everything went wrong. Inside the container wasn't electronics. It was women. 6 of them, huddled together, eyes wide with terror, duct tape over their mouths. Trafficking, human trafficking. Sophie's legs gave out. She stumbled backward, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't tax evasion. This was slavery. These women had been bought, sold, transported like cargo. One of them reached out, pleading with her eyes, making desperate sounds behind the tape. Sophie's mind screamed at her to run, to get out, to forget she ever saw this. But her body wouldn't move. She stood there, frozen, staring at the women who'd been condemned to hell. And then she heard footsteps behind her. Well, this is unfortunate. Sophie spun. A man stood there, not Marcus, someone else, older, with cold eyes and a gun hanging loosely in his right hand. "You weren't supposed to open that one," the man said casually. "That was container 8. You were supposed to inspect 4, 5, and 6. I made a mistake. Wrong number." "Yes, you did." The man raised the gun. "And now I have to clean up the mess." Sophie ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just ran. The gunshot cracked behind her, sparks flying off a metal beam inches from her head. She zigzagged through the warehouse, using containers for cover, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Another shot, another miss. She burst through a side door into the night, cold air hitting her face like a slap. The pier stretched ahead, dark water beyond. Nowhere to go. Footsteps behind her, getting closer. Sophie pulled out the burner phone Marcus had given her, fingers fumbling. She hit the only number saved in contacts. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Sophie," Marcus's voice sharp with alarm. "Container 8, women trafficking, someone's trying to." The gun fired again. The phone exploded in her hand, plastic shards cutting her palm. Sophie screamed and dove behind a stack of wooden pallets. The man was 10 feet away now, gun raised, and Sophie knew she was about to die. Then headlights blazed across the pier, tires screeching. A black SUV slammed into the man, sending him flying. He hit the ground and didn't move. The SUV door opened. Marcus jumped out, fury etched on his face. He grabbed the man by the collar, yanked him up. "Who authorized Container 8? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. The man coughed blood. "Dmitri, Russian shipment, he said you approved it." "I didn't approve shit." Marcus slammed the man's head against the ground once, twice. The man went limp. Marcus turned to Sophie, his face a mask of rage and something else. Guilt. "Are you hurt?" She held up her bleeding hand. "I'm alive." Marcus pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around her hand. "The women." Still in the container. Marcus made a phone call, spoke rapid fire in what sounded like Russian, then hung up. "My men are coming. They'll handle the cleanup. You need to disappear. Now." "What about?" "I'll take care of it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Someone in my organization went behind my back." Marcus's eyes were black with fury. "I don't traffic people, ever. That's a line I don't cross." "Then why?" "Because I'm not the only player in this city, and someone just tried to use my operation to move their cargo." He grabbed her shoulders. "Sophie, listen to me. You can't tell anyone about this. Not the police, not your father. If you talk, those women die. I'll get them out, I'll get them home, but you have to trust me." Trust, the word was a joke. But looking into Marcus's eyes, Sophie saw something she hadn't expected: truth. He was a criminal, but he wasn't lying about this. "Get me out of here," she whispered. Marcus drove her back to his office, neither of them speaking. Sophie's hand throbbed, blood seeping through the jacket. Her mind kept replaying those women's faces, their terrified eyes. At the office, Marcus pulled out a first aid kit, cleaned and bandaged her hand with surprising gentleness. "You should go to a hospital," he said quietly. "I can't. Questions." "I know." Marcus finished wrapping the bandage, his fingers careful. I'm sorry, this was never supposed to happen. Who's Dmitri? Dmitri was a Russian mobster who thought he could expand into my territory. He won't be making that mistake again. You're going to kill him. He tried to kill you. He used my business to transport human beings. Yes, I'm going to kill him. Marcus met her eyes. Does that bother you? It should, Sophie knew it should, but all she felt was a cold, dark satisfaction. No. Something shifted between them in that moment. An understanding. They'd both crossed lines tonight that couldn't be uncrossed. The year you owe me, Marcus said. It starts now, but I'm changing the terms. You work for me, yes, but you also help me clean up this organization. Root out everyone who thought they could use my company for trafficking. You're good with numbers, with patterns. I need someone I can trust to audit the books, find the leaks. Why would you trust me? Because you saw those women and you didn't run. You tried to help. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. I'm not a good man, Sophie. I break laws. I hurt people who cross me, but I have rules. No women, no children, no trafficking. Someone violated those rules. Help me find out who. Sophie looked at the whiskey, at Marcus, at the blood staining the bandage on her hand. She'd come here to save her father. She'd stumbled into something so much darker. But those women's faces haunted her. They needed someone to fight for them. Okay, Sophie said. I'll help you. Marcus raised his glass. To unlikely partnerships. Sophie clinked her glass against his. To surviving the night. They drank in silence, the weight of what had happened settling over them like a shroud. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly, his men dealing with the cleanup with Dmitri, with the women. Will they really be okay? Sophie asked. The women. I have contacts, safe houses, organizations that help trafficking victims. They'll be taken care of. Marcus looked at her. I know you don't believe me, but I keep my word. You paid for my father's treatment. That's the only reason I'm still here. And you opened that container, saved those women. That's the only reason I'm trusting you. The first rays of dawn were breaking over Portland when Marcus finally drove Sophie home. She lived in a small apartment in a neighborhood that was one step above condemned. Marcus looked around, frowning. This is where you live. On a failed business owner's budget, yeah. You're working for me now. You'll need to move. Somewhere safer, closer to the docks. I can't afford. I'll cover it, part of your salary. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed something. There's an apartment building I own downtown. 2 bedrooms, secure. Consider it a signing bonus. Sophie wanted to argue, but the truth was her current place had been broken into twice in the last year. And if she was going to work for Marcus, she needed security. Thank you, she said quietly. Marcus nodded. As she opened the door to leave, he spoke again. Sophie, what you did tonight took courage. Don't forget that. She looked back at him, this dangerous man who'd somehow saved her life and complicated it beyond measure. I did what anyone would do. No, most people would have run. You stayed. Sophie walked into her apartment as the sun rose, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. She showered, washing off the blood and grime and fear, then collapsed on her bed. Her phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Your father's doing well, responding to treatment. He asked about you. Sophie smiled for the first time in hours. He was alive. That's what mattered. But as she drifted to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into a world she'd never escape. Marcus Reeves had saved her, used her, trusted her, all in the span of one night. And somehow, against all logic, she trusted him too. The next 3 months passed in a blur of spreadsheets, encrypted files, and late nights in Marcus's office. Sophie moved into the downtown apartment, a place so nice she felt guilty every time she walked through the door. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city actual heat that worked. She visited her father every day, watching his color return, his strength rebuild. And she fell into the rhythm of Marcus's world. The legitimate side of his business was actually impressive. Reeves Shipping handled millions in cargo annually, employed hundreds of workers, and ran like a well-oiled machine. But underneath, Sophie found the rot. Shell companies, false invoices, payments to people who didn't exist. The trafficking operation had been small, just Dimitri and 2 others, but the financial trail was deliberately hidden. Sophie worked 16-hour days, tracing every dollar, building a map of corruption within Marcus's organization. And slowly, she began to understand the man himself. Marcus wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake. He was calculating, efficient, almost surgical in how he handled problems. But he also paid his workers better than union wages, made sure their families had health care, and took care of people who were loyal to him. He was a criminal with a code, and that code meant something. One night, 2 months in, Sophie was alone in the office, staring at a spreadsheet that wasn't adding up when Marcus walked in. "You're still here," he said. "Found something. 3 shipments last month that were logged but never unloaded. The cargo just disappeared." Marcus moved behind her chair, looking over her shoulder at the screen. He was close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his cologne. Something in her stomach tightened. "Where did they go?" he asked. "That's the thing. According to the books, they were delivered to legitimate businesses. But I called those businesses. They never received anything." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Someone's stealing from me." More than that, the cargo was medical supplies, high-value pharmaceuticals. Street value is easily $2 million. Who signed off on the deliveries? Sophie pulled up another file. "Thomas Carver, your logistics manager." Marcus pulled out his phone, made a call. "Bring Carver to the warehouse, now." He hung up, looked at Sophie. "Good work." "What are you going to do to him?" "Have a conversation." Sophie knew what that meant. Marcus. He stole from me. Worse, he stole medicine that was supposed to go to clinics in underserved neighborhoods. That's not just theft. That's people dying because of his greed. Marcus's eyes were cold. "I don't forgive that." "I understand. I've never been part of something like this before." Marcus pulled up a chair, sat facing her. "You don't have to be. You've done your job, found the leak. I'll handle the rest." "No, I want to be there. I want to see this through." Marcus studied her face. "You've changed. When you first came to me, you were desperate, terrified. Now you're..." He trailed off. "What?" "Stronger, harder. I don't know if that's a good thing." Sophie looked down at her hands. The left one still had a faint scar from that night on the pier. "My father's alive. That's all that matters." "Is it?" The question hung between them. Sophie met his eyes, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the impossible situation they'd created. She was supposed to work for him for a year and walk away, but walking away felt less and less possible with each day that passed. "I should go," Sophie said, standing. "It's late." Marcus stood too, closer than he needed to be. "Sophie." "Yeah. Thank you for everything you've done. I know this isn't the life you wanted." Life rarely gives us what we want, just what we can handle. Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to almost beautiful. "You're stronger than you think." Sophie left before she could do something stupid, like touch him, like close the space between them, like forget that he was a criminal and she was only here because her father was dying. But as she drove home through the Portland rain, she couldn't deny the truth anymore. She was falling for Marcus Reeves, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The next night, Sophie stood in the warehouse where this had all started, watching as Marcus's men dragged Thomas Carver to his knees. The logistics manager was crying, begging, swearing he'd pay it all back. Marcus stood over him, expressionless. $2 million in pharmaceuticals, medicine for children's hospitals, cancer clinics, community health centers. You stole from the people who need it most. I have gambling debts. The Russians were going to kill me. And you think I won't? Marcus crouched down, eye level with Carver. You worked for me for 5 years. I paid you well. I protected you. And you betrayed me. Please, please, Marcus, I have a family. So do the people who died because you stole their medicine. Marcus stood, pulled a gun from his jacket. Sophie's heart stopped. This was it. She was about to watch Marcus kill a man. But Marcus didn't fire. Instead, he handed the gun to Sophie. Your call, Marcus said quietly. He stole medicine that could have saved lives. People like your father. You decide what happens next. Sophie stared at the gun in her hand, heavy and cold. Carver looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Please, he whispered, please don't kill me. Sophie's finger rested on the trigger. It would be so easy. One pull, justice for everyone he'd hurt. But when she looked into his eyes, all she saw was another desperate person who'd made terrible choices, just like her. She handed the gun back to Marcus. I can't. Marcus nodded, something like approval in his eyes. He turned to Carver. You're done in Portland. My people will put you on a bus to Seattle tonight. You have 24 hours to leave the state. If I ever see you again, I will kill you. Understand? Carver nodded frantically. Marcus's men dragged him away. You're soft, Marcus said, but there was no judgment in his voice. Maybe, but I'm not a killer. Neither am I, not unless I have to be. Marcus holstered the gun. The medicine has been recovered. It'll be delivered to the clinics tomorrow. Anonymous donation. From a criminal. Does it matter where good deeds come from? Sophie didn't have an answer for that. They walked out of the warehouse together, the rain starting again. Marcus's car was parked nearby, but neither of them moved toward it. 6 more months, Marcus said. Then you're free. You can walk away, start over. What if I don't want to? The words were out before Sophie could stop them. Marcus turned to her, rain soaking his hair, making him look younger, less dangerous. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere in the last 3 months, this stopped being about my father's medical bills. I'm good at this work. I'm good at finding problems and fixing them. And she trailed off. You what? Sophie took a breath. I like working with you, for you, whatever this is. Marcus stepped closer, rain streaming down his face. This is dangerous for both of us. I know. You should walk away, find someone normal. A teacher, an accountant, someone who won't put you at risk. I don't want normal. I tried normal. I married normal. Normal left me with $60,000 in debt and a divorce lawyer. Marcus laughed, a sound Sophie had rarely heard. It transformed him completely. Fair point. So what do we do? Sophie asked. Marcus reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. We're careful, we're smart, and we see where this goes. Then he kissed her. The kiss was nothing like Sophie expected. It wasn't rough or demanding. It was soft, questioning, like he was asking permission. Sophie kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. The rain poured around them, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered except this moment, this impossible connection. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he whispered. The worst, Sophie agreed. I'm still going to do it. Me too. They stood there in the rain, holding each other, knowing they were starting something that could destroy them both. But for the first time in years, Sophie felt alive. Truly, completely alive. The next 4 months were a masterclass in secrecy. Sophie and Marcus kept their relationship hidden from everyone, his organization, her father, the world. They met in his office late at night, stolen hours between legitimate work and the darker side of his business. They talked about everything: her failed marriage, his childhood growing up in the mob, her dreams of opening another business someday, his desire to leave the criminal world behind. "I want out," Marcus told her one night, lying on the couch in his office, Sophie curled against his chest. "I've been building legitimate businesses for years, trying to transition away from the illegal operations. But the mob doesn't let you retire. They own you until you're dead." "Then we find a way to get you out," Sophie said. "It's not that simple." "Nothing about this is simple, but we'll figure it out." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "You make me believe that's possible." Sophie's father was in remission now, growing stronger every day. He'd asked about her work, her late nights, the new confidence in her voice. Sophie deflected, changed subjects, lied. She hated lying to him, but the truth would destroy him. One afternoon, Sophie was visiting her father at his new apartment. Marcus had arranged for him to move somewhere nicer, with in-home care, when her father asked the question she'd been dreading. "Who is he?" Sophie froze. "What?" "The man you're seeing. I'm old, not blind. You have that look, like your mother did when she met me." Robert smiled. "So who is he?" "It's complicated. Love usually is." "Dad, I can't." "Sophie," her father took her hand. "I don't know what you did to pay for my treatment. I've asked the hospital 100 times and they won't tell me, but I know you sacrificed something. And I know you're different now. Harder, sharper, it scares me." Tears burned Sophie's eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. You saved my life. But I need to know you're safe. That whoever this man is, he's worthy of you." Sophie thought about Marcus, the criminal, the killer, the man who'd held her while she cried about her father's cancer. "He's not perfect. He's done things I can't forgive, but he's good to me. He protects me, and he's trying to be better." Robert studied her face. "Then that's enough. Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." But promises, Sophie was learning, were fragile things in Marcus's world. The end came on a Friday night in late November. Sophie was in Marcus's office, going over the books, when Marcus burst in, his face ashen. "We have to go, now." "What's wrong?" "The FBI, they've been investigating my organization for 6 months. They're moving in tonight." Marcus grabbed her hand. "I have a plan to get you out. You were never part of the illegal operations. If they question you, you tell them you only handled legitimate accounting. Understand?" "What about you?" "I'll handle it." "Marcus." "Sophie, listen to me." He pulled her close, his hands framing her face. "I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, and I'm not going to let you go down with me." "I love you too, which is why I'm not leaving." "You don't have a choice." Then the warehouse doors exploded inward. FBI agents poured in, shouting, weapons drawn. Sophie saw Marcus reach for his gun, and without thinking, she grabbed his wrist. "Don't, please don't." Marcus looked at her, saw the tears streaming down her face, and slowly raised his hands. "I surrender." The agents swarmed them. Sophie was separated from Marcus, pushed to the ground, handcuffed. Through the chaos, she locked eyes with him one last time. He mouthed 3 words, "I love you." Then he was dragged away, and Sophie's world went dark. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. Sophie told them everything about the legitimate business, nothing about the smuggling, nothing about the container with the women, nothing about the stolen medicine. She was good at this now, lying, hiding, protecting. Finally, the FBI agent across from her leaned back. "You're either the dumbest accountant in Portland, or you're covering for him." "I did my job. I handled the books. I didn't know about anything illegal. Your father's cancer treatment. 340,000 paid in cash by an anonymous donor. That was Marcus Reeves, wasn't it? Sophie's stomach dropped. I don't know. We traced the money. It came from one of his shell companies. You worked for him in exchange for your father's treatment. The agent smiled coldly. That makes you an accomplice. I didn't know the money was. Save it. You're going to prison. Unless you testify against Reeves. Give us everything you know and we'll consider immunity. Sophie looked at the agent, at the recording device on the table, at the walls closing in around her. She thought about Marcus, about the women he'd saved, about the medicine he'd recovered, about the man he was trying to become. I want a lawyer, she said. 3 weeks later, Sophie sat in a minimum security prison, waiting for trial. Her father had nearly collapsed when he found out. The guilt was eating him alive, his daughter in prison because she'd saved his life. Sophie had lied again, told him she'd been involved in minor accounting fraud, nothing serious. She'd probably get 2 years, maybe less with good behavior. The truth was she was facing 10 years. Federal conspiracy charges. The FBI had built an airtight case against Marcus, and she was collateral damage. On Thanksgiving Day, Sophie was allowed a visit. She expected her father. Instead, Marcus walked in. He looked different. Thinner, beard stubble on his jaw, orange jumpsuit replacing the tailored suits. But his eyes were the same, dark, intense, focused entirely on her. "How are you here?" Sophie asked. "Lawyer arranged it. I had to see you." Marcus sat across from her, the glass barrier between them. "I'm sorry. This is all my fault." "No, I made my choices." "You made them because I put you in an impossible position." Marcus's hand pressed against the glass. "I've cut a deal with the FBI. Full cooperation. Names, dates, operations, everything. In exchange, they're dropping all charges against you." Sophie's heart stopped. "What?" "You're going to walk out of here today. Clean record. No charges, it's done." "But you..." "I'll get 15 years, maybe 20, but I have good lawyers. I'll appeal, get it reduced. And when I get out, if you'll wait for me, I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you." Tears poured down Sophie's face. "Marcus, no, you can't." "I already did. It's done. You're free." He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile. "I told you once I keep my word. This is me keeping it." "I'll wait for you," Sophie whispered. "However long it takes." "Don't. Go live your life. Find someone who can give you the normal you deserve." "I don't want normal. I want you." Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet. "Then I guess I'll see you in 15 years. I'll be here every visiting day." "Sophie." "Every single one. I'm not giving up on you." Marcus pressed his hand harder against the glass, and Sophie matched it, palm to palm, separated by barriers but connected by something stronger than prison walls. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." Guards came to take him back. Marcus stood, looked at her one last time and mouthed, "Wait for me." Sophie nodded. "Always." 5 years later, Sophie stood outside a federal prison in California, waiting. Her father was beside her, healthy and strong, cancer-free for 3 years now. He'd finally learned the truth about everything Marcus, the deal, the sacrifice. And instead of anger, he'd felt only gratitude. The prison doors opened. Marcus walked out, squinting in the sunlight. 5 years off for good behavior, model prisoner, cooperation with multiple investigations. He'd aged, gray threading through his hair, new lines around his eyes, but he was still Marcus. He saw Sophie and stopped, as if he couldn't believe she was real. Sophie ran to him, closing the distance, and threw herself into his arms. Marcus caught her, held her, buried his face in her hair. "You waited," he whispered. "I promised." They stood there, holding each other while the world moved around them. Robert approached, extended his hand to Marcus. "Thank you for saving my daughter," Robert said. "She saved me first." Marcus pulled back, looked at Sophie. "I have nothing now. My business is gone, my money seized, my reputation destroyed. I can't offer you the life you deserve." Sophie smiled. "You can offer me you, that's enough." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Marcus kissed her, right there in the prison parking lot, and it felt like coming home. They started over in Seattle, far from Portland and the ghosts of their past. Marcus got a job at a shipping company, legitimate this time, no smuggling, no mob connections. Sophie opened a small accounting firm, helping other small businesses survive. They lived in a modest apartment, drove an old car, counted pennies. And they were happy. Some nights, Sophie would wake up and find Marcus staring out the window, the weight of his past still heavy on his shoulders. She'd wrap her arms around him and remind him that they'd both been broken once, and they'd rebuilt themselves into something stronger. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked one night. "Everything you went through because of me." Sophie thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, desperate and alone in a hospital parking lot. Then she looked at the woman she'd become, scarred, stronger, loved. "Not for a second," she said. "You saved my father, I saved those women, you got a second chance. We both got second chances, that's not something to regret." Marcus pulled her closer. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." They'd started at the bottom, both of them, and clawed their way to something that looked like redemption. The path had been dark, dangerous, and lined with choices neither of them were proud of. But they'd survived, together. And sometimes, Sophie thought that was enough. 2 years later, Robert Mitchell walked his daughter down the aisle at a small ceremony in Seattle. Marcus wore a simple suit, no criminal empire, no bodyguards, just a man who'd found his way out of the darkness and into the light. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Sophie half expected FBI agents to burst through the doors. But there was only silence, broken by her father's quiet tears of joy. "I do," Sophie said, her voice clear and strong. "I do," Marcus echoed. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small crowd cheered, friends from their new life, people who knew them as the accountant and the shipping manager, not the criminal and the woman who'd saved him. That night, lying in their hotel room, Marcus traced the scar on Sophie's hand from that night on the pier. "We've come a long way," he said softly. "We have, and we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" Sophie smiled, placed his hand on her stomach. "We're going to need a bigger apartment." Marcus's eyes went wide. "You're..." "3 months. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you." Marcus pulled her close, and Sophie felt the dampness of his tears against her neck. They'd both been lost once, drowning in choices that nearly destroyed them. But they'd found each other in the darkness. And somehow, against impossible odds, they'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for believing I could be better, for waiting." Sophie kissed him. "Thank you for paying for my father's treatment, for saving those women, for giving yourself up to set me free. We saved each other. That's what love does." Outside, Seattle rain tapped against the windows, the same rain that had fallen on Portland years ago. But this time, Sophie wasn't drowning. She was safe, warm, loved, and ready to face whatever came next. Because she'd learned something in those dark months working for Marcus Reeves. Sometimes the people who save us aren't heroes. Sometimes they're broken, flawed, and dangerous. But that doesn't make the saving any less real. And sometimes, love doesn't look like fairy tale-ese. Sometimes it looks like two desperate people finding each other in the middle of the storm and deciding to weather it together. Sophie Mitchell had walked into that warehouse with nothing to lose and everything to gain. She'd made a deal with a criminal to save her father's life. And in the process, she'd found something she never expected: redemption, purpose, and a love that refused to break no matter how hard the world tried to shatter it. 5 years from now, their daughter would ask how Mommy and Daddy met. Sophie would smile and say, "We found each other when we both needed saving." And that would be the truth. Not the whole truth. Some stories were too dark for children's ears. But the truth that mattered, that love could bloom even in the darkest places, that people could change, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Sophie looked at Marcus, at the man who'd been a criminal and became her husband, and knew without doubt that she'd make the same choices all over again. Because in the end, it wasn't the mistakes that defined them. It was what they did afterward, how they fought to become better, how they refused to let their pasts destroy their futures. They'd been broken, they'd been lost, they'd been desperate. But now they were home.